Warning, this man may kill you.
What?
I don't know, so be careful.
On the chilly afternoon of October 13th, 2011, a 14-year-old budding YouTuber, Chyenne Kircher, simply vanished from her home in East Dubuque, Illinois, leaving behind nothing but a mysterious note that would make the police go around in circles. But what seemed like a runaway case from the get-go soon turned out to be one of the most shocking and twisted cases. Chyenne had unintentionally captured the person who would be responsible for her sudden disappearance. When the detectives got to work, a chilling plot was uncovered. Who this mystery man was and what he did to Chyenne left the whole community completely horrified.
Is this where Cheyenne is? Yes, that is where Cheyenne is. And how did she get me? By me.
When Chyenne Kircher went missing on October 13th, 2011, all she left behind was her phone, a change of clothes, and a handwritten note. Authorities learned of her disappearance after her family noticed she hadn't returned home from school as expected. Her family initially took matters into their own hands, searching the area and calling on friends and family to help. When their efforts yielded no results, they eventually contacted the authorities. Little did they know, the web of clues in this case would take a triple alliance of police forces to crack the case.
I first heard of Cheyenne Kircher as a missing person from East Dubuque, Illinois. A report went out to all agencies that she had been reported missing.
Chief O'Connell called me and had me come in because we were going to start calling a bunch of friends and family members.
Nearly a year before her disappearance, Chyenne started posting quirky, lighthearted videos on her first YouTube channel named Cheyenne 2010. These videos provided insight into her personality and showed her sense of humor, with Cheyenne often acting in skits and performing comedic bits. So when this happy kid went missing one day, the entire community was on high alert. As soon as her disappearance was reported, officers, along with search dogs, combed through the family home. The search extended into the surrounded wooded areas near their residence, but despite these efforts, they couldn't locate her.
Cheyenne liked to go to the park, and so we would look around the park in places where maybe she could stay, sleep, eat. The school was another favorite place of hers. There's a playground, the football field is there. She could have been anywhere.
We had made a visit to the house, to Cheyenne's house. I did not go in the house at that point in time, I just stayed outside. We also made a visit to the school, and I cleaned out Cheyenne's locker. We kept everything that was in that locker. We also interviewed a guidance counselor.
For those familiar with Cheyenne's circumstances, the idea that she might have wanted to leave home wasn't entirely surprising, as the family dynamics were a bit unusual.
She lived with her mom and her stepdad, Terry Abbas, and then another adult male that Cheyenne would share was her mom's boyfriend, and then she had an older brother and a younger brother. She seemed always a little disheveled.
Cheyenne's biological father had been out of the picture ever since Lori separated from him when Cheyenne was 8 years old. She remarried a man named Terry Abbas, whom Cheyenne affectionately referred to as her dad. Terry had quickly become the closest figure she had to a father after the loss of her relationship with her biological father, who she had known only in her earliest years. Yet there was an added layer of complexity in her home environment, as Lori's boyfriend, Steve Staver, also resided in the family home alongside Terry. It's unknown when exactly Steve entered the picture, but the decision to move him into the home seemed very normal to Lori, her husband, and her new boyfriend. Yet the family's dynamics were not the only, nor even the most troubling factor. It was the condition of the house itself that raised the most serious concerns. When investigators arrived at the home to speak with Cheyenne's family, they encountered what one described as an unbearable smell, unlike anything they'd experienced before. Inside there were piles of trash, heaps of dirty laundry, and extensive filth coating nearly every room. The stench covered the entire home, creating a severely unhygienic and unpleasant environment. The horrendous living conditions, combined with the unusual household setup and the note left behind, initially led authorities to view this as a classic runaway case, with Cheyenne simply trying to escape her reality.
When you look at the amount of risk factors that were in this case, you're almost guaranteed that you've got either a future victim or a future offender, or somebody that may escape those things but is going to have many issues that they need to overcome, which is quite a bleak way to look at a case like this.
Given the circumstances, law enforcement didn't find it difficult to believe the contents of Cheyenne's note, which was the only clue they had. In the note, Cheyenne had bid farewell to her family, explicitly telling them not to search for her. She explained that she was leaving to pursue a better life elsewhere. The note, the deplorable living conditions, and the strained family life all painted a picture of a young girl in desperate need of an escape, and her actions appeared to confirm her decision to run away. But everyone in the community had the same questions.
Where the heck did she go? Did somebody take her? Did she really run away? I couldn't imagine that she ran away, but I had a feeling of urgency. The longer you wait, the less likely of a positive outcome.
However, what the detectives uncovered next would completely change the direction of the case. Certain details didn't quite align with a straightforward runaway case. When police combed through the house, they noticed that Cheyenne had left behind her cell phone, an item she was known to keep close at all times. Even more curiously, she left her jacket and shoes she was wearing that day, an odd decision given the time of year. With winter approaching, temperatures had already started to drop near freezing, making it unlikely that Cheyenne would willingly leave without appropriate clothing. These unusual factors suggested to law enforcement that perhaps there was more to her disappearance than what initially met the eye. Since there seemed to be some hope of her being around, the police kept trying to locate her. The detectives reached out to Cheyenne's grandparents, Gary and Mary Jo Kircher, who shared their memories and concerns about her.
We did hear information that there was a letter that they found that said something to the effect that, nobody's to blame, I just don't want to be found, I'm okay, and that was it. And then on the 31st, which is a few days after, my wife's birthday, she had never missed a Halloween at all and her birthday. And I told my wife, I said, something's really wrong, because even if she would have ran away, she would have got a phone and called and said, happy birthday, Grandma. And that's when I, kind of felt it was going downhill from that.
Next, the detectives decided to learn about Cheyenne's school life, hoping that maybe some lead or information could help complete this complex puzzle.
The one time there was a rainstorm, and a lot of kids weren't going to school because it was raining so hard. She walked from where her house is at up to the elementary school in the pouring down rain. She looked like a wet rat, they said, when she came in. The teachers took her off the side. They always have like sweatpants and sweatshirts there. Got her in some dry clothes, got her hair dry, and then put her other stuff in the dryer so when she could go home. But that's how much education meant to her.
However, her time at school could also be a significant source of unhappiness. She genuinely wanted to fit in, and being accepted by her peers was something she longed for.
What I knew about Cheyenne was that she needed some tender care. She was a student who liked attention, maybe not always positive attention. It could have been negative attention. She struggled with some social settings. However, she really wanted to belong.
I think she was bullied about her behavior and how she would have outbursts and stuff, and she couldn't control her behavior. And to some kids, that's uncomfortable.
After speaking with Cheyenne's friends and family, it became clear that her running away was a strong possibility.
At the end of that particular day, we had learned that Cheyenne had been the victim of bullying at school. We had learned that Cheyenne's home life was not the best. So we were, at that point, leaning towards and confident that we had a runaway 14-year-old that was hiding out somewhere with a friend in Dubuque.
But this was just the beginning. This simple runaway case would lead the detectives to the most deranged suspect ever. Cheyenne's family and friends made heartfelt public pleas for any information about her whereabouts, hoping someone might come forward with clues.
Somebody who's so outgoing and so creative and, wants to be friends with everybody. I just don't understand, what would push a child to run away and tell their parents, I love you, you did nothing wrong.
But as months passed with no confirmed leads, the police search gradually lost momentum, though her family held on to the hope that she would one day walk through their door. By 2013, with Cheyenne missing for nearly 2 years, the local sheriff's department handed the case over to a specialized police team. There was a higher chance of a mastermind committing a crime and getting away with it so far, but that was soon to change. Lead detective Dave Hackmeister shifted his focus, treating the investigation with the seriousness of a potential homicide. One challenge loomed large. Chyenne had no dental records on file. If a body were to be discovered, those records would be essential for identification, making her case all the more challenging. In March 2013, authorities enlisted the newly formed Critical Incident Response Team to reinvigorate the investigation into Chyenne Kircher's disappearance. This specialized team was composed of law enforcement officials from multiple counties, as well as personnel from the FBI, all bringing new resources and perspectives to the case. Team members began by retracing the steps previously taken by the East Dubuque Police Department, hoping that a fresh approach would reveal new leads. Their first task was a forensic examination of Cheyenne's old damaged cell phone. It had never been analyzed because it was thought to be inoperable. But the phone had every bit of shocking information that detectives least hoped to find.
Chyenne had been on the internet speaking with older men, so that was a concern of ours.
To their surprise, the phone contained valuable information, revealing that Chyenne, a frequent YouTube user and internet browser, had been in contact with individuals from far-reaching locations, including Florida, Texas, and Alaska. With the FBI's extensive national resources, investigators quickly identified and reached out to these contacts, interviewing each of them. However, despite these efforts, investigators found no evidence that any of these individuals had been involved in Cheyenne's disappearance. As this line of inquiry reached a dead end, detectives shifted their attention back to Cheyenne's immediate family, looking for any indication that her disappearance could be linked to those closest to her. The case was just beginning to take a much more sinister shape. Could the detective's suspicions be right? If yes, what could possibly be the motive for her family members to do something to her?
Mom was a suspect. Mom's boyfriend was a suspect.
But most importantly, detectives were suspicious of Cheyenne's older brother. In fact, his threats and rude behavior was caught on camera.
Okay. I'm back, ladies and gentlemen. What did you do? A hockey stick? What are you doing in my room?
Not your room, dumbass.
Get out of my room.
Touch me again, I'll break your hands.
Warning. This man may kill you.
However, investigating this further, the relationship between Chyenne and her older brother turned out to be like any other sibling relationship. And right after dismissing him as a suspect, investigators were about to uncover some disturbing new information which would leave them shocked. Chyenne had previously suggested to a few people that she'd been abused by her stepfather, Terry Abbas. In July 2011, Chyenne confided in a friend that Terry Abbas might have been molesting her, alleging SA.
When Chyenne came to school, she would tell me a lot about her home life. One time, her stepdad, she called him Terry. And she was very upset because she got home from school and her mom was at work and he was on the computer. He was looking up and other girls, and she threatened to tell her mom on him. He definitely gave me the creeps, and probably every staff member here the creeps. I mean, you could just tell there was something not right about him.
She had even suggested that he was watching her inappropriately, including spying on her while she was in the bathroom. Another confirmation of abuse came from someone so unexpected that detectives could never have predicted. Terry Abbas's own biological daughter, Sharia Chambers.
It started off, like visitation, supervised. It started off with my grandma, and then after a while, I guess they approved him to have visits with us alone, and then turned into overnights.
During those overnight visits in East Dubuque, Sheree says she met Chyenne Kircher. She says Kircher confided in her that Abbas was abusing her.
I told her that she needed to go to teachers, she needed to go to somebody she trusted, she needed to go and tell somebody, because I couldn't help her. She's seen the consequences of telling him no, so part of me wants to think that she's too scared to go and ask for help.
Detectives later learned that Chyenne had been interviewed by law enforcement at the time regarding these claims, but she'd not disclosed any further details or confirmed abuse during those interviews. But the real clue was about to come from Cheyenne's YouTube channel. An old video that Chyenne had streamed live would turn out to be a key element in solving her mysterious disappearance. On February 19th, 2011, things took an interesting turn when Chyenne launched a new YouTube channel, Shy Love 2011. This channel essentially served as a continuation of her previous one, though with time, she began introducing new content that showcased her family members as featured stars.
Stay out of it!
Look at Cheyenne in her poor clothes.
No! Ow, you bit
You know,
me!
if he jacks you in the face, I'm gonna laugh my ass off.
Without a dedicated filming space, Cheyenne made videos by recording in the family's shared spaces where her stepfather, Terry Abbas, would often be visible in the background. Occasionally, Cheyenne would jokingly throw comments his way, sparking playful bickering that seemed to reflect the typical hostilities between family members rather than any serious conflict. In fact, she seemed to care for the man she called Dad, often posting about him affectionately on her Facebook page. That raised eyebrows right away. Could that man have been involved in all of this? Investigators, while carefully reviewing her channel for any leads, saw little in the content that pointed to anything other than typical family dynamics. Her videos appeared lighthearted, and for a while, her YouTube account seemed like a dead end in the investigation. But little did they know, at this moment, they'd discover something very shocking, which would turn the case in a completely different direction. One video had caught their attention. It was posted to her channel on March 7th, 2011, just months before her disappearance. It began like any other video of Cheyenne's, lighthearted and humorous. But then things took an unexpected turn. When Cheyenne was streaming this video live, she unintentionally captured a glimpse of the man who had been preying on her. In the middle of filming, a man suddenly entered the room, though only his lower half appeared on camera. Cheyenne, who was normally energetic and lively, immediately changed. She quieted down, grabbed the man's arm, and whispered, "I'm on a live stream, be careful." The man responded with a casual, "Okay," but then proceeded to grab her. Cheyenne reacted with a loud stop, falling back onto her bed before snapping back into her comedic persona.
I know what I can do.
What?
I don't know. I should be careful.
Okay.
See, stop! Did I say you were in this? No, you weren't. Get away! Help! See how abusive? No, he's not abusive. No! Stop!
Yes, I am. I'll pull her out.
No!
Alright.
See what I have to go through every day? Mister, I don't need... Stop! See?
The man then re-entered the frame, this time playfully engaging her in what looked like a slap fight, switching to a humorous tone and clearly performing for the camera. He left shortly afterwards, and Cheyenne resumed the video as if nothing unusual had happened. The man's close physical presence, the secrecy of his approach, the shift in Cheyenne's demeanor, all of these elements spoke volumes, suggesting something deeply troubling. As detectives continued to comb through Cheyenne's other videos, they began piecing together clues about the identity of the mystery man. Once they identified him, their reaction was one of shock. It's here that the disturbing story will start to unfold. The investigation was redirected to her stepfather, Terry Abbas, once again. Since there was no direct evidence to confirm Terry's evil intentions towards Cheyenne, police were convinced that Abbas had posed a threat to Cheyenne and likely played a role in her disappearance. With this, Terry Abbas became the primary suspect in the case.
We're a little bit concerned of a couple of things. Number one, that he might flee. Number two, we're hopeful that he might trip himself up if he's really nervous about our investigation, and he might go back to the scene of the crime. If he did, in fact, murder Cheyenne, he might try to move the body or conceal it more than it is.
Detectives grew increasingly certain that Terry knew more about Cheyenne's fate than he was letting on. Hoping he might lead them to a clue, the task force decided to monitor his movements by placing a tracker on his car. Given that the family had frequently gone on camping trips to various remote locations, investigators theorized that if Abbas had harmed Cheyenne, he might revisit a secluded site to cover his tracks. If he did kill Cheyenne, he might return to one of those familiar camping spots. So they placed the tracking device on his car, set up the monitoring software, and waited to see where he'd go.
But we also were of the mind that he wants to keep up the illusion that he's still cooperating. And so he's not going to go anywhere. He's going to stick it out as long as he possibly can. So we placed the tracking device on the vehicle. So I fire up the computer. I'm anxious to see, where's this guy going? What's he doing?
After activating the tracker, detectives observed him leaving his home, stopping at a gas station, and then crossing the bridge into Iowa. But then, without warning, the tracking signal abruptly stopped. This was the moment in the case that no one could have predicted.
And I'm like, okay, what happened? Did he find the tracking device and throw it in the Mississippi River? Was my first thought.
With this lead going cold, the team decided it was time to confront the family more directly. They needed to bring the possibility of foul play into the open.
This is a confession case. You know, it's either a confession or somehow we stumble across her body. So we decided as a group, we're going to bring them in, interview all of them at one time in separate rooms, and after our interviews, send them on to a polygrapher, and felt that that was our best option.
All of Cheyenne's family members agreed to come in for interviews, except Terry Abbas. His reason was reportedly that he had work obligations, but his absence stood out as a red flag to investigators.
Someone who doesn't show up when everyone else is participating, to me, is a big red flag. And there's a reason he doesn't want to be there.
At the arranged meeting, the rest of Cheyenne's family members agreed to sit for formal questioning and undergo a lie detector test to assist the investigation. Terry Abbas, however, initially resisted, though he ultimately had no choice but to comply. When Abbas arrived, he was interviewed by a seasoned FBI agent who was part of the investigation team.
So on the 18th of September, when we had scheduled the interviews, they all in fact arrived. We spoke to them briefly as a group, and then we told them exactly what was coming up. You know, we're going to separate you, we're going to interview you, we're going to find out every single detail as to what led up to her missing, and we're going to figure out why she left. And then, from that point, we're moving you on to a polygrapher.
It was a decisive moment for the investigation, as detectives hoped the interviews and lie detector test results would finally provide some answers. However, the deranged motive behind the unthinkable crime that they would soon uncover would leave the police in shock. There was yet another twist in the story. When the scheduled interview time arrived, Terry Abbas was nowhere to be found. Concerned about his absence, FBI Special Agent Wayne Jakowski, who had been coordinating with Cheyenne's family, decided to track him down. Jakowski located Abbas in East Dubuque and escorted him to the police station to ensure his participation in the investigation.
It was definitely intentional to let them know that we were going to have a polygrapher waiting after the interview. We want to put as much mental pressure and police presence in their mind as possible. We separated them, we interviewed them all. Mom, the boyfriend, and the brother were seemingly pretty upfront.
Detectives noted that his responses lacked the specificity and sincerity they expected, and the team sensed a shift as Abbas's demeanor hinted at something he was concealing. The investigative team was counting on the polygraph test to apply enough pressure to make Abbas reveal the truth. Right from the start, beyond the simple baseline questions verifying his name and date of birth, he began failing the test. The FBI agent administering the polygraph confronted Abbas, explaining that the results clearly indicated he was not being truthful. The agent told Terry that this wasn't going well for him and that his answers didn't seem honest.
We decided we're going to put Terry Abbas in the videoed interview room because he's most likely the one that would be our offender. And if he confesses, we want to have it on video.
Under increased scrutiny, Abbas began to unravel. And what Abbas revealed next would solve the mystery of Cheyenne's heart-wrenching story.
Oh, you got your man. When you say that, who confirms I have to ask? Hey, you got Terry Abbas. Cheyenne is not with us, she's gone.
During his initial confession, he recounted a troubling story. He claimed to have taken Cheyenne up into the woods behind their home, where they spent time running around and playing. Cheyenne had wanted him to chase her through the forest, so he did, though he was clumsy, slipping and sliding as he tried to keep up. According to Abbas, he eventually slipped and, at some point, blacked out. When he regained consciousness, he discovered Cheyenne lying lifeless before him with his hand wrapped around her neck.
We go back to that day when she came home from school and just kind of start from there, from the best of your memory. We were joking around. We were outside. And she wanted me to chase her. I chased her. She went up in the forest.
I chased her up there for a few minutes. And I fell.
Okay, you fell?
Yeah, slip and sliding. She thought it was funny. But later on, it was just blur on, just on the way up. I guess what you could say, like I just snapped. Before I knew it, I was standing over a body. Oh. Last thing I remember, my hand was over her neck for some reason.
Just over her neck and doing what?
Squeezing, I guess. And I panicked.
What happened to cause that?
I had no clue. No honest clue.
FBI agent Jakowski knew that Terry wasn't telling the whole truth. He knew there was more to the story. And so he continued to build a rapport with Terry, creating an environment of trust and safety.
What other things are going on between you and Cheyenne? I need to understand that a little bit. Can you help me?
Everything was great. Here's why I can't figure out why did I snap. It's been all perfect.
Have there been any other injuries on her from at any point that you might have hit her or struck her for any reason?
No. No. How far as I can recollect.
Did you ever hit her at any point in time for any reason?
No. I'm not a violent person. That's what I can't understand.
Falling for Agent Jakowski's facade, what Terry told the FBI agent left the detective in chills.
But I just knew I was going to get caught. I just want to come clean. I just want to get this one, get this behind us, get the healing process started on her. That's boring.
That's
right. I know she's going to get hit by guns.
Were you involved with her at all in any way?
No.
I need to know that too if you were. If there's something else that might have caused some of this, so I can understand as best as I can.
No.
No sexual type of relationship between you?
No.
Ever at any point in time?
Well, let me back that statement up. You would get the whole truth, though. I'm sure.
I appreciate it.
Yes, there was.
I don't know how exactly it all came to be, but somehow he felt as though he could tell me his deepest, darkest secret.
Yeah, right up there.
Happened up in the woods while you're chasing her? So you had intercourse with her that day before this happened?
It did happen.
Following the sexual act, he strangled her to death. He stated that he dug a fairly deep hole by himself after the act. He'd lured Cheyenne up there and put her into the hole after assaulting and strangling her.
And what did you do right after that?
Boy, got a shovel and dug a hole. I don't know why I did.
During the interview with Terry Abbas, he was asked if he'd lead the team to the gravesite where he had allegedly buried Cheyenne, and he agreed. There was another set of the most sinister confessions that the cops were about to discover. Finally, investigators had a confession, but they now faced the heart-wrenching task of breaking the news to Cheyenne's family, who had been holding on to hope for her safe return. When Cheyenne's mother was informed, the news devastated her. She broke down in tears, becoming inconsolable. For nearly 2 years, Cheyenne's mother had clung to the belief that her daughter was alive and staying with someone who would eventually help her return home. The shock was intensified by the knowledge that Cheyenne was likely buried only about 100 yards from her family's home. Though the police had secured a confession and felt confident that Abbas was responsible, they had yet to locate Cheyenne's body. The task force decided to move forward immediately with the search, aiming to provide closure to her loved ones and confirm Abbas's account. Abbas led them to a woodland area where he claimed to have killed Cheyenne, directing the team to what he believed was her burial spot. On September 18th, shortly after Abbas's confession, investigators arrived at the wooded location he indicated. Abbas led them close to the site he remembered, marking a significant starting point for the search team.
Okay, I want to take a good look at this. No park. Is this where Cheyenne is? Yes, that is where Cheyenne is. And how did she get there? By me.
And I asked him, I said, Terry, I said, how far down did you bury her?
About how far down do you think she is? About 45 foot. And this was a hole that you had dug? Yeah. Did anyone help you put her in there? No. You did this by yourself?
Yes. And I didn't believe him.
So after she died, did you leave her here when you went to get the shovel? And then did you bury her the same day that she died? How many times have you come up to visit Cheyenne? Do you remember when that was? Did anyone help you with this at all? No. This was all you? Okay. Did you tell anyone you did this? No. And is this the general area? Because I remember you telling Wayne that you had some sort of sexual intercourse with her. Is this that general area? Right over here? Yeah. Right behind him? Show us. This was clear back then? Liz was here, and then where you buried her? Is that where you killed her? 4 or 5 foot from there.
However, as hours passed, they found themselves digging deeper and deeper with no sign of Cheyenne's body. Anxiety grew among the investigators as they peeled away inch after inch of soil, only to come up empty-handed. Despite Abbas's guidance, they started to worry that they were either digging in the wrong area or had been misled entirely.
And working up on search warrants and all that kind of stuff that we're going to need to do what we needed to do to bring her home.
Me just to recover her remains and bring some closure for everyone.
With the excavation, it's very meticulous. I mean, they're just taking layer by layer and all the dirt getting sifted, and every little nugget is being looked at and examined.
It became very frustrating, so we had a lot of people out there working around the clock to try to find her, and we're not finding anything. We're not finding it. Usually we would find something by now.
This isn't adding up. As far as what his initial confession was, digging the hole the same day as the murder.
We believe that we have the right location now, but we really don't know.
What if he's lying about the location? And we really believed he was just screwing with us.
The investigators reached out to Abbas once again. Abbas, now willing to speak, was prepared to explain why Cheyenne's body had not been found at the initial search site.
There's about 30 FBI agents up there. We've been digging since yesterday. And I'm going to be honest with you, I was getting a little worried because we're going down and down and down, and I'm not seeing nothing.
Just based on the information that our ERT team had said, usually people are not buried so deep in the ground. So was he being truthful? Was he not being truthful?
And what I'm having trouble with here, Terry, what I'm having a little bit of trouble with is one guy digging this hole in that time frame that you're saying.
It didn't take me that very long to dig that.
With that little shovel. You follow me?
During this interview, about 30 minutes in, Abbas made a shocking confession, revealing that he'd actually dug Cheyenne's grave the day before he murdered her, not after. This was clear evidence that he'd planned the murder in advance.
Now's the time, Terry. Now's the time to completely let that ghost, to let that demon out of your body, to completely let him out, because he's still in there, and he's still gnawing at you, because I can see it in your eyes. He's still gnawing at you. A little bit now, a little bit there, a little bit later, and that's going to get nothing but worse as the rest of your life goes by. And I've dealt with these types of things before, and I know that the hardest thing to do is to let that demon out. But once he's gone, you got your life back. You got the inside of you back. And don't live with yourself for the rest of that demon the rest of your life, because you don't deserve that. Let that demon out. Let him out now and tell us exactly how that went down. And you will feel better. And that demon won't be gnawing at your heart. Let him out.
You guys was right about one thing. It took longer to dig the hole than you think. I did dig it the day before. And yes, I did plan on killing her.
This confession also shed light on one of the investigation's most puzzling elements. Detectives were looking for Cheyenne's body in the right spot, but since Abbas had spent days digging up a deep grave, she was going to be at least 5 feet below. But this was not the end of the shocking confessions in this case. In fact, he was about to reveal one of the most twisted secrets. In that second interview, Abbas admitted that he'd made Cheyenne write the goodbye note nearly a month before her death, initially suggesting it was part of a prank they'd play on Cheyenne's mother. He claimed they'd intended for Cheyenne to pretend to run away, leaving only a note to frighten her mother briefly. However, instead of going through with the joke, Abbas decided to save the note, knowing he could use it to divert suspicion in the future. For Abbas, this prank note became the perfect cover to explain her disappearance, giving him a twisted alibi that would make it seem as though Cheyenne had simply run away.
I think what happened is that you went to Cheyenne and said, hey, let's put a practical joke on your mom. And then let's write this note. And then you held on to this note. And then now you're formulating a plan.
When this all went bad and she ended up dead, he remembered he had that note, that would come in handy for a time like this.
It was done like at least 30 days prior when I was getting ready to dig the hole, until later on it just snapped in my head saying, hey, this would be a perfect good time to use the note.
With this new perspective, detectives began piecing together the true motive. They believed that Abbas had been sexually abusing Cheyenne for years, and as she grew older, feared she might reveal what he'd done. In July, Cheyenne had reportedly confided in a friend, hinting at the abuse, and detectives suspected that she may have even threatened to tell others. Abbas, realizing the increased risk of exposure, knew he had to silence her to protect himself. In this chilling turn of events, investigators now understood that he'd meticulously planned her murder to permanently eliminate this threat. Armed with Abbas's new confession, the forensics team returned to the search area and finally began to uncover evidence of Cheyenne's remains. While carefully excavating, one of the FBI evidence technicians found a small bracelet, one that Cheyenne had worn regularly. Known as a friendship bracelet, the black and white band had a unique symbolic meaning for her. She believed it kept her demons away. Investigators recognized this bracelet from photos and knew upon its discovery that they were finally in the right place. The very next day, detectives were able to fully recover Cheyenne's remains.
Officials tell us this morning remains have been found behind the house, and they believe it is the remains of that 14-year-old missing East Dubuque teen, Chyenne Kircher.
With Abbas's confession and mounting evidence, the team had everything necessary to prosecute him for Cheyenne's murder. Abbas was formally charged with murder, to which he confessed and pleaded guilty. Remarkably, while many defendants in his position would have been fighting for bail or trying to reduce their charges, Abbas seemed oddly resigned to his fate, pushing to expedite his trial and imprisonment. At his first court appearance, Abbas made the unusual decision to represent himself, opting to forego a defense attorney. The judge, aware of the gravity of his choice, urged him to consider it carefully. However, Abbas remained firm in his decision. The trial itself was swift, given his confession and guilty plea. By December 2013, the case came to a close as the court sentenced Terry Abbas to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The verdict was final, ensuring that he'd remain behind bars in Illinois, serving a life sentence for the murder of his stepdaughter, Cheyenne. The entire community was deeply affected, united in grief, and resolved to keep Cheyenne's memory alive.
Tonight's going to be about honoring Chyenne Kircher, and it'll be a way for the community to come together and get some closure.
Marchers purchased t-shirts with Kircher's picture on it, as well as bracelets and glow sticks. All money raised will go toward a memorial in her honor.
The chilling context behind her disappearance made her YouTube videos even more unsettling, particularly her last recorded upload. What's perhaps most haunting, though, is realizing that this final video represented only a small glimpse into a reality Cheyenne was likely enduring daily. It's heartbreaking to imagine all that Cheyenne faced behind the moments the camera captured and the quiet suffering that might have gone unseen. Terry's confessions came one after the other as the guilt kept feasting on his conscience. Do you think, in the end, he still hid some of the facts about Cheyenne's death and didn't disclose the full story to the detectives? Do you find it odd that Cheyenne lived in a crowded home and yet nobody knew of the abuse she'd been facing at the hands of Terry for years? Let us know your thoughts. We'd love to hear from you. If there's a case you'd like us to cover, Don't hesitate to drop your recommendations in the comment section below. For more captivating true crime stories, like, share, and subscribe to M7 Crime Storytime. If you appreciate our content, consider becoming a member and unlock early access to exclusive content.